Hey, architecture firm owners and emerging leaders. Get ready for unparalleled insight into the development of a world-class architecture firm and a worldwide organization driving the digital transformation of the design and construction industry. With Build Smart, the podcast that's changing how our profession operates. We share the incredible stories behind innovation in the building industry with my friend and co-host, Patrick McLeamy, FAIA, former CEO of the international architecture firm, HOK.
You know, Yamasaki's office or firm lasted during his lifetime. And when he passed away, I think that was the end of the Yamasaki office. Helmut did not want that. He wanted a firm that would live out and grow beyond the founders.
In Season 1, discover the untold stories behind HOK's meteoric rise, from 150 employees in St. Louis to a powerhouse with over 1,900 staff members and 27 offices worldwide.
You know, they weren't as polite as the Kojima people. That was just boom. And anytime you have a creditor, whether it's Kojima or the bank, that wants their money, unless you can raise money someplace else, you are out of business.
Bankrupt. And hold on tight for Season 2, where Patrick takes us on a new adventure as chairman of Building Smart International, shaping the future of digital transformation in the design, construction, and operation of built assets.
Ian Howell, Ken Harold, and I, Ken was my technical representative from HOK. The three of us took a tour of Europe of 5 cities in 5 days. Very busy time.
Simply follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Smart now and uncover lessons that will transform you and your architecture firm. Hey, architecture firm owners and emerging leaders. Get ready for unparalleled insight into the development of a world-class architecture firm and a worldwide organization driving the digital transformation of the design and construction industry. With Build Smart, the podcast that's changing how our profession operates. We share the incredible stories behind innovation in the building industry with my friend and co-host, Patrick McLeamy, FAIA, former CEO of the international architecture firm, HOK.
You know, Yamasaki's office or firm lasted during his lifetime. And when he passed away, I think that was the end of the Yamasaki office. Helmut did not want that. He wanted a firm that would live out and grow beyond the founders.
In Season 1, discover the untold stories behind HOK's meteoric rise, from 150 employees in St. Louis to a powerhouse with over 1,900 staff members and 27 offices worldwide.
You know, they weren't as polite as the Kojima people. That was just boom. And anytime you have a creditor, whether it's Kojima or the bank, that wants their money, unless you can raise money someplace else, you are out of business.
Bankrupt. And hold on tight for Season 2, where Patrick takes us on a new adventure as chairman of Building Smart International, shaping the future of digital transformation in the design, construction, and operation of built assets.
Ian Howell, Ken Harold, and I, Ken was my technical representative from HOK. The three of us took a tour of Europe of 5 cities in 5 days. Very busy time.
Simply follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Smart now and uncover lessons that will transform you and your architecture firm. My name is Mark R. LePage, and you are listening to Entre Architect Podcast, where each week I speak with inspiring, passionate people who share their knowledge and expertise, all to help you build a better business as a small firm entrepreneur architect. Today's guest is James Inedu-George, one of the most influential architects in West Africa. As the founding partner of HTL Africa, his innovative designs have transformed cities and addressed critical urban challenges. His work spans from creating affordable housing solutions to revitalizing historic structures, and he continues to push boundaries with visionary architecture that blends function, sustainability, and community impact across the globe. James Inedu-George, welcome to Entre Architect Podcast.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure being here.
It's great to have you with us. I am looking forward to this conversation. I'm very interested in the work that you do, but I want to know your story first. I want to understand how you became an architect. So when did you discover your passion for architecture, and who or what inspired you to get started?
Right. Again, it's very nice to be here. It's a nice program you've created over the years.
Thank you.
For me, architecture is something that, I know this sounds cliche, but it's something that was ingrained from birth. So I came out of the womb making models, really. But most importantly, I used to, as a kid, have my leisure was to make these kind of stadia with loose stones at the backyard of my dad's house. My dad had this really large house. So I used to make these kind of self-contained sports cities that I'd play myself in those little cities. Then I'd destroy them and then I'd rebuild them again. And I always liked to draw and paint, just like every kid. But my dad pointed me to the direction of architecture because I don't draw and paint. I have a specific talent that blends rationality with mathematics, physics, and the ability to see space and make forms. So intelligently enough, he was able to kind of put all that together as one thing and allow me pursue something that was kind of burning in me at that time. I was 6 when all this started. So I started to play basketball parallel with trying to become an architect. And I dropped basketball just before I entered university. But I have followed architecture since. And in my journey, by the time I was about 14, I encountered Le Corbusier in an article that was talking about the 20th century, and they called him in Time magazine the greatest architect of the 20th century. And so I got obsessed with his work because it spoke to me in a way that I didn't know how to explain. It was something that I felt that I should come from me, something I thought I had in me. So I spent a lot of years trying to also understand Corbusier. Before I went to school also, my mother was a businesswoman. So she was in the fabric trade. She was quite successful at that. And she had a store in the center of the town we lived, which was close to traditional parts of the city. And so it was kind of a forbidden part of the city, but I foraged there once and I saw the traditional architecture of the houses and I knew that I had maybe made a mistake because I had no wiggle room to do anything else. And since then, I've pursued this relentless pathway of trying to figure out how house architecture can become the next language of architecture in the world, sprinkled a little bit with some Le Corbusier and his writing. So that's, in a nutshell, that's my foray into the profession.
So your mom sounds like an entrepreneur. Sounds like she had a store and successful in fabrics. What did your father do?
My father was a civil servant that rose to the heights of the civil service, almost became a minister, which is quite a feat, given that his career started during the British occupation of Nigeria.
You're based in Nigeria still today?
Yes. My main office is in Nigeria, but I'm doing things around the world.
Yeah. And you do a lot of work around the world. How has your upbringing and your experience in Nigeria influenced and impacted your work throughout the world that you do?
I think architecture is a spirit, right? So it's something that you unearth by trying to understand where you come from. So that spirit is not about form. It's about how things are composed together and how space develops because of that composition. I grew up in a place where there was a special kind of architecture that was not looked at or taught about. And I studied that architecture, and that's the bedrock of what we sell. If we call what we do a product, is based on the understandings of Hausa traditional architecture, vis-a-vis understanding also of the rational architecture of the West, and the differences between those two. So because of my upbringing, I was able to quickly see that I shouldn't pursue one direction or the other. I should stay in a position where I understood what the differences were and use that to amplify the talent that I have. Sounds a little complex, but a very simple example. The difference between Michelangelo's David, the sculpture, and a traditional mask in any village in Africa. David is about the perfection of detail. It's what it is. It's the veins exactly proportioned as veins should be proportioned, etc., etc. The traditional African mask is an intent. Therefore, it can be interpreted into 300 or 400 other things. In some instances, some intelligent architects like Corbusier would look at that and it will remind him of an urban plan, and he would trace that and make an urban plan. Or Picasso, it will remind him of Women of the Night, and he would convert that into kind of cubist view of things, and he would make something cubist out of it, etc., etc. So there are clues that are left in traditional African design, architecture, and art that are left for us, the moderns, to unearth and make new things with them. What you see is not interpreted. Is a big problem which happened to Africa when the British came, for instance. When they saw the traditional architecture in northern Nigeria, they couldn't interpret it in the sense of their own architecture. So they said it wasn't architecture. But it was architecture, but it was a different kind of architecture. It wasn't very focused on detail and outlook. It was focused on creating a machine to amplify outdoor living inside. So that simply just changes everything, right? So in Europe, the house is a contained form that is for living in, like a house is a machine for living in, a single thing. In Africa, it's a city block. There is a system that several layers of environments are put together and several things happen. A farm relates with cooking, relates with sleeping, relates with playing, etc., etc. So it's a whole city block, and it also describes a way of living that when people die, for instance, their houses are allowed to die with them, but they're not dead, they're paused. And those houses are unearthed by their children and rebuilt with the same materials, but in a different way, so that it's almost like an adaptive transformation, which was what I was doing as a kid when I was making those stadia,
right,
dismantling them and starting again. So somehow, like I said, this journey for me has been an inevitable journey. I'm not somebody who has found a path. I'm somebody who was on a path. So that's how I approach the profession and the world.
Yeah, that's interesting that you're not someone who found a path, but you're someone on the path. So your influence and your roots have certainly impacted the work that you do. Your references to Le Corbusier and others would make you think that much of your work would be modern and new, but most of your work is adaptive reuse and historic preservation, right? So what inspired you to focus on that aspect rather than focusing on new architecture?
As much as I like new architecture and I pursue it all the time, we're in a precarious situation in Africa. So in 2011, I had a partnership with a couple of friends that eventually broke down, and then I started HTL Africa in 2010. And so to make that partnership, I wrote a manifesto called the Much More Manifesto. And I wrote it in a trance. I wasn't really kind of studying, but I figured that two things. First, the city in Africa was a city built around a road that took you from the hinterland either to the airport or to the seaport or to the railways. So it wasn't a city as I had seen in Europe. So there were several omissions. And they weren't omissions, they were actually not made. So it was a different kind of city. That was one. So the second thing I figured out was that the buildings that were made, especially by the colonialists in Africa, which we had inherited and were trying to build a nation around, and we started to build our own buildings based on the ethos of those buildings. Those buildings were built in an incomplete fashion. They were built with strong bones, but the layers of the exterior that make a building work for our client weren't complete because the people who built them knew that they weren't going to use them forever. Moreover, they were, in certain instances, they were built as a defense against us that lived there, which is neither here nor there. So it was kind of an architecture of fear. And that happens when you meet a situation you don't understand. In Africa, we allow the rain in. We allow the sun in. In Europe, you keep the rain out. In America, you keep the rain out. You keep the sun out, right? In Africa, we don't make spaces that have excess light, right? We allow the sun come into the courtyard. So we stay under the sun. But when we're indoors, we make a very small, compact pavilion to stay in that is cool without much light. So it's totally different. It's a totally different thing. In Europe, the courtyard is an excision from the center of the house. In Africa, it's not a courtyard. The forms float within a free space. So the courtyard surrounds the house. So it's really an inverse. But colonialism doesn't have time to study those things and those nuances. And that's the fact. So what had happened was, what was left for us to build our nation on were these heavy bones and flimsy skins. And then we continued making that architecture. So the architecture is now decaying. And there's these economic problems in the world. Now there's a form of hyperinflation. In our lifetime, we haven't seen inflation this bad. So it's hard for people to start things from beginning. People are trading assets. So what do we do to those fragments? How do we complete those fragments? That was the question that manifesto asked. But it also suggested that we make a new type of space. And the space was based on strategy, a zero space, a space that did nothing, but just helped to complete the architecture. And then we now start to find these kind of buildings in our careers. And we start to use that same strategy to make our buildings. And it's working. And suddenly now, adaptive reuse becomes the same adaptive transformation that we had seen in traditional house architecture, which is the same thing, again, as I said, that I was doing as a kid when I was building those stadia. So like I said, it's a loop that is continuing to add parts to itself.
Share with me, because I don't know much of the history of Nigeria, and I'm sure many of the people who are listening don't know the history of Nigeria. And I know it's probably a very long story. So can you sort of give us some background on Nigeria? Because the conversation that we're having has much to do with the history of Nigeria. And I want to make sure that I understand it, and I want to make sure that people who are listening understand it. And then we can understand why what you just said about the buildings and the architecture within Nigeria is very significant. So can you share a little bit of the background?
Let me do a crash course.
Yes. I know it could take an entire podcast series,
yes,
I'm sure.
Yes, actually. Okay, so Nigeria is, first, a beautiful country. It's an intelligent country with a lot of people in it. It's a country that's very dependent on its population. And that population is going to keep growing for the country to be prosperous. So let's put that out of the way. Through an amalgamation of North and South in 1914, the British formed Nigeria and named it the Niger area. Lord Lugard and his wife named it the Niger area, which is kind of a tongue-in-cheek take on the fact that the River Niger, one of the longest rivers in the world, crosses through Nigeria and divides the north and the south, right? So the north of Nigeria is closer to the Arab nations. So through North Africa, from the 15th century, Islam came to northern Nigeria and stopped somewhere close to the middle belt where the two rivers, Benue and Niger, joined themselves, right? Christianity came from Portugal and Britain, etc., through the sea. So the lower part of Nigeria, the south, has the sea. So the upper part, topmost part of Nigeria is connected to the Sahara Desert.
Okay.
So at the middle of Nigeria, there's a total change in temperature, climate, and culture between the two halves, right?
Yeah.
So one side now, because the British and the Portuguese couldn't get past the River Niger, Christianity stopped at the river. Because the Arabs didn't want to cross the River Niger, Islam stopped at the river. So now that sandwich, like a burger,
yeah,
Islam on top, Christianity below, and nothingness in the middle of rivers, becomes this kind of powder keg. Is the reason why you hear all the things that happen religiously in Nigeria.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a peaceful country. But the Portuguese came in the 15th century, the British came in the 19th, and they figured that aside slavery, it was a good place to take resources from. And then in the 1950s, they found oil in the south, I think southwest, southeast. And then that created its own myriad of problems.
Right.
So it created an impatience between the So what I've described in totality has created like an impatience. In addition to the fact that the colonialists wanted to kind of take and leave, it created an impatience that has forced things not to be developed in totality.
Mm-hmm.
So that impatience is sometimes what we see in Nigerians that people think we're brash. We're not a brash people. We're quite refined and cultured. But in reality, things have to happen very fast for them to make any sense. So historically, when the British came, they attacked Lagos. They made treaties with Ibadan. Then they backstabbed the other people, and then they took over the south. They went to the north. It was harder to take it over. The north had a feudal system that believed in kings. So they made these deals with the northerners, for the northerners to rule themselves and collect tax on behalf of the British. In 1914, however, Lord Lugard decided to merge north and south without a conversation between the two. The first conversation happened in 1999 because it was supposed to have happened in the 60s when Nigeria was given its independence from the British. Because we didn't win it. We were given our independence because the British lost power due to World War II and they couldn't keep their protectorate.
Yeah.
So we got our independence. There was no dialogue. It led to a war in 1967 to 70 that 2 million people died, right? Nigeria is still trying to heal from that war.
Yes.
And it's again the same story of that burger, Christianity on top and below, same thing.
Yep.
So I'm from the middle strip of Nigeria. So I have an understanding. I'm half northern, I'm half southern. So I have a perfect kind of blend. I'm truly Nigerian. I have a perfect blend. My father is northern, my mother is southern. So I have a perfect blend of the country. So I don't see the tribes, which is what very offensive term right now in Nigeria. But I don't see the different languages. I just see one thing that has all these similarities that we can take advantage of to move ourselves forward.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. We have many, many Nigerian architects in our community. That we have a Facebook group that has 8,600 architects in it. And Nigerian architects are very active in that community. And so I've always wondered why, right? There's not a lot of other African architects in the group, but Nigerian architects are there. And so it's very interesting to hear the background. So I understand it now, and our listeners can understand it. But let's bring that back to the architecture that you're designing, because it's all influenced and impacted by that story that you just told of the impatience and the flimsiness of the buildings because they were built very quickly and abruptly and then abandoned. And so now you have these structures, you have these cities built the way they are, you have your independence. And so now you have to figure out, what do you do with them, right? How do you make them yours? And that leads to the work that you do with adaptive reuse and historic preservation, because you're taking buildings that are already there and reinventing them and reusing them to help the society that is growing there, correct?
That's exactly. I couldn't have put it better than that. I would only add that in somewhere hidden in our minds, architecture is a uniting force between Africans.
Let's take a quick break to say thank you to our sponsors for their support of this episode. Architects, listen up. Is something interfering with your happiness or preventing you from achieving your goals? Regardless if you have a clinical mental health issue like depression or anxiety, or if you're just a human who lives in this world and is going through a hard time, therapy can give you the tools to approach your life in a very different way. I know this community of small firm architects very well, and I see many of you struggling. That's why I reached out to this episode's sponsor, BetterHelp. BetterHelp is a platform that makes finding a therapist easier because it's online, it's remote. And by filling out just a few questions, BetterHelp can match you with a professional therapist in as little as a few days. It's easy to sign up and get matched with a therapist. There's a link in the show notes. It's betterhelp.com/architect. Just use that link, betterhelp.com/architect. Clicking that link helps support this podcast, but it also gets you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp. So you can connect with a therapist and see if it helps you. If you need someone to talk to, consider online therapy with BetterHelp. Click the link in the show notes or visit betterhelp.com/architect. That's betterhelp.com/architect. Thank you to BetterHelp for supporting this podcast and for supporting our community of small firm architects. ARCAT's Spec Wizard is the tool that will help you save time writing specifications. Going through the manufacturer's specification line by line to find the right product leads to frustration and errors. And that's where Spec Wizard comes in. It's a free, patented tool that allows you to select products and options error-free and generate a 3-part specification in minutes. Go to arcat.com, that's ARCAT.com, and try Spec Wizard today. Please visit our sponsors today and thank them. Thank them for supporting you, the EntreArchitect community. Yes, that's exactly where I wanted to go, is how does that architecture, the work that you're doing, help to heal and help to guide the society that is developing in Nigeria?
A funny story. We're finishing the preservation of the church in a 150-year-old church in Accra, out of the outskirts of Accra, in Chibi. In my office, the architect in charge of the project is a Muslim. In Nigeria, that doesn't happen, but in HTL, it does.
Interesting.
Right?
Yes.
One of the competitions I did before COVID was for the Icon Mosque in Dubai. Only Christians worked on it. There were Muslims in the office. And I do that very consciously so that we blur the lines of these imaginary lines that have been drawn for us.
Yeah.
Right? And we use architecture and the work, the groveling work that we do as architects to rewrite the story and narrative of our birth and leave a legacy of unity that, depending on how big we eventually grow, we can spread that in the world, right? Because if we have this comfortable place that everybody's one, we're just people in a country that want the best for ourselves,
right,
and therefore the best for the country. If I had 10,000 people and that's spilled out, then I'm starting a revolution of some sort. So hidden inside what I'm doing,
yes,
is that I think about that all the time and I make very conscious efforts to cross-pollinate cultures and religions and worldviews when we get briefs, so that somebody who doesn't speak a certain language, for instance, the building in northern Nigeria is one of the buildings in northern Nigeria, the large convention center that is finishing now, is being handled by a Yoruba guy from the south who doesn't speak the language in the north. I speak both languages, but he's handling it and he's learning the language in the north. So when he comes back to Lagos, he's going to come back with another understanding. So he becomes a Nigerian.
Yes.
So it's a very conscious thing that we're doing in the office, minus all the madness of creating architecture and doing business.
Right.
It's subtly we're trying to make change without talking too much about it.
Yeah. And I love that, by not talking too much about it, just doing it, right? Just integrating these people and having them work together and create and learn from one another. And it just starts to happen, right? Because you're having those dialogue and you're doing something that's very complicated. Building a building, right? Designing and building a building is complicated. It sounds like it's very complicated in the areas that you're talking about, where you have very deep history that you're not really pushing against, but influencing and doing things differently than they've done in the past. And so I'm sure you get some pushback as well when you do things like that.
Yes, agreed. Yes, I do.
Talk about that a little bit.
It took us a couple of years to be able to convince anybody to build anything that we are designing, right? Even when we've done this, you'll find decisions in a project, because I have all the cards and I can read the cards. Some decisions in the project are made with the bias of, the sentiment of Nigeria as a place, tribe and all that, which is fine. I mean, around the world, an Irish person would be Irish, no matter how many years he spent in America.
Right.
St. Patrick's Day, he wears his green, right? So there's pride in being solely from a place. But there's also pride in being able to put that aside for the greater good. Yeah. So sometimes we fight these people that only want a certain kind of identity to be made for them. We lose projects sometimes because we wouldn't do things that look in a certain way to reinforce a certain stereotype. So midway in a project, we might just, our calls will just keep going to voicemail, right? So it's less glaring now because there's a little bit of success in the way. But when we started, you might send out a few sketches and you'd never pick your call again, right? So,
Yeah.
or you might do a competition and they will just disqualify you.
How did you get past that? Just by doing it and making small incremental change?
Yeah, I kept doing it.
Patience.
I kept doing it, just being patient about it.
Yeah.
Because a long journey. In the long run, if we have 1,000 buildings and 5,000 staff, and I'm 75 or 80 and I'm tired of doing architecture, I've lived a full life. Whether I win the Pritzker Prize or not, I've lived a full life and I've changed a paradigm, right? So at the beginning, you must know that I was really in a hurry because I come from a place where there's constant pressure, right? But when I started to kind of go around the world, I realized that yes, that pressure is good, but is it always like that? And so I step back and I look at it and I see, well, I can live in the pressure without having to be kind of pressed down all the time. Nigeria people walk very fast, talk very fast, do things very fast. So things get slip out of the way. So I decided that to counter that, we will keep doing competitions until we win one. We'll keep looking at our cities and proposing things. And when we can get grants, we'll do that. We will not be ashamed of not building. If we don't build for 10 years, 15, 20, it's fine. We will just keep developing our skill. But we would put a business framework around that.
Yeah.
So that we can keep bringing people into the fold. So I did that and I just kept on going. So I still run the office. Now we're almost to about maybe 16 or thereabout, almost 20. I run the office with that ethos, as if we're two people. We don't have projects and we want the world to see this thing that we invented that would change the world. So that's what has kept us at the cutting edge and kept us fighting for what we believe in. Out of every 20 or 30, maybe one comes through, but it's a big one. Yeah, so we've been able to grow that way.
Yeah.
Again, it's patience and perseverance.
It's very inspiring. Many, many lessons in your story about patience and structure and impact and bringing people together and building sort of a culture, right? The culture of your firm is very intentional. And I talk about that a lot on the show about how important culture is to a firm. Like you're taking that to exponential level because you are, taking cultures and religions and histories and merging them, right? And I think by doing that in your small microcosm, you've made an impact just in your own firm and the influence that those people will have on other people, right? That will compound through their generations. The things that they've learned and they've experienced, they will be able to, share that with other people. I think that when your team reached out to be on the show, I was really excited about this conversation because of that, because I want to learn more. I want to understand more, right? I see the Nigerian architects in our groups. And as I get older, I realize that people are people everywhere in the world, right? That the problems that we have are not the people, right? It's the institutions and the cultures and the leaders that often have power that are the problem. But the people are people. We all want the same thing. We all want, safety for our families and happiness and resources to be able to live a healthy, happy life. That is universal throughout the world. Everywhere you go, that's what people want. And so it's great to have this conversation and understand the work that you're doing and the impact that you're having, because I believe that you will inspire many who are listening today, no matter where they are, right? They could be in New York City doing high-end high-rises, and the words that you're sharing are going to influence the way they think. And so I appreciate that conversation. And I don't want to end it. I have more questions for you. I want to understand, you also work on affordable housing, right? And I'm sure much of the story that you've told lends itself to that as well. So I read that you have a $10,000 sustainable house that you've designed. Can you share what inspired that and what that's all about?
Okay, there was a statistic that came out in Nigeria that we need 22 million houses. It's a vague statistic. There are 220 million people in Nigeria. It's saying that 10% of people don't have homes, and the Bureau of Statistics gives 6 people to a home as a family. So again, it's quite a vague statistic. The fact of it is that Nigeria needs a lot of houses, and not because there are no buildings in Nigeria, but because the cost profile eventually of the building is so high after construction that the normal man can't live in those buildings.
Just to maintain it, just to live in it.
Just to live, in fact, just even have access to live, it becomes almost impossible in some cases. So you have people that are living on the water in Lagos, in a place called Makoko. It's a famous thing that something was built there and fell, this and that. But you also have people living under bridges in Lagos, knowingly because of this kind of issues. And so the problem is not land, because you don't have to live in the center of the city anywhere in the world. That's an illusion. The problem is how to make a product that everybody can access, every bank can give a loan, and anybody who has a degree that can get a job can be given a choice to choose between a house and a car, right? So your smartness is determined by which you want to have. Because if you have a house, it's an easier way to build wealth. You can always buy a car, right? So the major focus was to be able to track the list of the population, albeit the list of the educated population, in a financial system that the banks were already issuing out for something that we thought at that point could be looked at as frivolous, right? So if you went to the bank, or you got a job in the bank, for instance, and you have either a car loan or a house loan, so what was the least amount of money that a bank would give out without them complaining? At that point, it was about $10,000. That time, the naira to the dollar was about 120 to 150. So that's about 1.5 million naira then. And so that was our budget. So it started to become an exercise of subtraction. We started to subtract square areas, a lot of parts from a typical house. And then we came up with a simple, sustainable house with about 10 square meters of solar panels, a facade that could also serve as a farm, an air void that could help purify air as it moves through the building, but could also help you to expand the house when you make some money, that sits on a very small footprint and can be built anywhere. And then we started getting obsessed of how to turn that into a factory-made product that people can access and take us out of the equation. All we do for you, all these architects and engineers do for you, is to determine the kind of foundation and build that foundation on your land. And then you can buy it like how you buy stuff from Costco, for instance. You can buy your parts. And when there's a problem with one of the windows, you buy a new window, right? So that's the dream. It's almost like making a Tesla. But then, just like Tesla, the lower population is so hard to make for. So it's easier to make a more advanced model.
Right, which is how Tesla started with their premium car first.
Yes. So we made several models of this affordable house. Somebody helped us do a test case. We saw that it worked. And then we moved into making the next series of houses, which is for the middle band of the population, which we call TCH, the compact house. About $50,000. In America, that's a throwaway in housing. But $50,000 is kind of a good standard price. So we're building 2 now, and so far so successful. And after those 2 are built as proof of concept, it can now be spread around. And then we can then focus back on the smaller, more industrialized version as a business. So that's the affordable housing story.
That's amazing. What does the future of HTL Africa look like, and near future? Like, what does the next 3 to 5 years look like? What do you want to accomplish in the next 5 years?
We first want to build bigger buildings, but we want to go into making our own affordable housing. But most importantly, we want to appear in Europe and America. We want to start to kind of compete and at least be right at the door of making these bigger buildings in a place like New York. Staff-wise, we want to be in the hundreds in the next 5 years, which is a tall task for an architect, but we have to figure it out. So that's where we are. Those are our dreams.
How do you get put on the list for projects that you're talking about in New York and elsewhere?
Now, that's where the problem comes. That's what we're trying to find out. That's what we're trying to find out. Because, I mean, an easy way would have been to, if I had a best-selling book, or if I had done a best-selling exhibition and all that. So we're pursuing all those ends. We're trying to write a good book. We're trying to do exhibitions in Venice, blah, blah, blah. But we're also trying to do the conventional, try and meet with these bigger developers and show to them what we do. Because sometimes in business, that direct approach, and this is the positive part of being a Nigerian businessman, we're not ashamed to knock on your door and show you our wares, right? And sometimes that's the only way to make things happen. So, yeah. So in a few months or in the next 6 to 7 months, I'm going to come and spend an extended period in New York, in that New York area, and see what we can prospect. I'm also organizing a lecture tour that will start from Florida and end in New York. I'll do perhaps about 10 to 15 schools in that time. So that kind of opens up the doors for people to know who we are.
Yeah. Well, anybody who's listening who's based in New York, if you want to hook up with James and introduce him to the city, reach out to him. HTLAfrica.com is the website. Anything that we can do to help James, let me know. I'm happy to make introductions or anything we can do. I think telling your story on podcasts is a great way to get your word out, get your story out. I would definitely say that when you are on podcasts, tell the story of Nigeria, because I think the history and the story behind the work that you do is important. And Americans don't know the history. They should, but they don't. And I think it's an important piece of what you do because it explains much of why you're doing what you're doing. And it's very powerful. It's a very powerful story. So thank you for coming on here and sharing that story. Before we go, I want to get your take on my final question. You're talking to thousands of architects. Many of them are business owners just like you. What's one thing that a small firm architect can do today to build a better business for tomorrow?
Aside becoming an extreme nerd and read everything in your purview, networking is very important. And I'm not talking about those business launches. I'm talking about, because we find that we need people that we never thought we'd need. And anybody is a link to the next thing, right? And the last thing is never take for granted the fact that what you make is a product. If you take that seriously, sometimes you might not need a client. You might only need money and investment. So yeah, those three things. If you take those three things seriously, you would fly.
James Inedu-George is his name. The firm is HTL Africa. HTLAfrica.com is the website. Go check it out. Go check the work that they're doing. Reach out to James and say hello. Let him know that you heard his story on Entre Architect Podcast. James, thank you for the work that you're doing, the impact that you're making, and thank you for coming by here and sharing your knowledge at Entre Architect Podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the time. I keep doing this work. It's very important work.
If you liked this episode of Entre Architect Podcast, please share a link to this episode with a friend. Either just click the share button or highlight the URL and send the link to this episode with a friend, because that's how Entre Architect has grown to serve thousands more architects just like you throughout the 10 plus years of Entre Architect. That's how we've grown, architect to architect. So I would love for you to share this episode and all the episodes with one friend every week. We'd love that. And thank you to our sponsors for this episode. We don't have an episode if there's no sponsors. So thank you to our sponsors. Links to those sponsors, which you should go visit and click, And all the resources that we discussed today for this specific episode, they are all available at entrearchitect.com/podcast. Every episode that we've recorded is there, entrearchitect.com/podcast. Go click the links to the sponsors and say hello. Entre Architect is a member of the Gable Media Podcast Network. You should go visit that at gablemedia.com. That is the next evolution of interactive media and resources for the AEC community. You can now earn continuing education credits for listening to select episodes of this podcast, Entre Architect Podcast. Yes, AIA CEUs for listening to a podcast. It's there, and many other podcasts are there as well, and you can listen to all of them and get credit. Learn more about our program, Gable Members Program, at the gablemedia.com/members website. That's GABL media.com/members. And if you are a small firm architect, join us today at Entre Architect Network. That is the worldwide organization for small firm entrepreneur architects. If you own your own architecture firm, you are an entrepreneur architect. You are an Entre Architect. With weekly live group business coaching, we have business coaching there, monthly live business training with AIA CEUs, 2 a month, so 24 AIA credits per year, including 12 of those are HSWs. We have them in the membership. Business resources, all the resources you need to run your business, special session webinars, mastermind groups, and a thriving community of small firm architects just like you. Hundreds of architects are there waiting for you to join. So we provide the support and encouragement you need to succeed as a small firm architect. I know that you haven't been trained as a business person when you launched your firm. That's what we do. Come learn how to run a business at Entre Architect Network. And today you can go join right now for free for 30 days at this link, entrearchitect.com/30 days will give you free 30 days for membership. Go check it out at entrearchitect.com/30 days, and I will see you there. Thank you for listening to this episode of Entre Architect Podcast. My name is Mark R. LePage, and I want you to remember 3 words: love, learn, share. Have a great day.
Imagine earning continuing education credits while doing exactly what you're doing right now. Well, you can. Gable Media has revolutionized the way you earn your continuing education credits with a groundbreaking approach. Forget running around town and scouring the internet for credit-worthy courses. Fulfill your CE requirements effortlessly by listening to engaging podcasts just like the one you're listening to now. Our podcasts are designed to educate, entertain, and inspire, all in a user-friendly environment. But wait, there's more. Architects, Gable Media is also approved as an AIA continuing education services provider. Upon completion, we handle everything, from reporting your hours directly to the AIA to storing your certificates in your personal Gable Media profile for your self-reporting needs. So follow the link in the show notes and start earning your credits in the most innovative and entertaining way possible with Gable Media.
Attention architects and creative minds, get ready to supercharge your brand with Build Your Brand, the podcast that's unlocking the secrets of branding success for creatives. Hey there, it's Mark R. LePage, founder of Entre Architect, and I'm inviting you to join my friend, architect marketing expert Jeff Eccles at Build Your Brand podcast, where he explores the captivating stories of the world's top brands and transforms their lessons into powerful moves for small firm architects and creatives like you. In Season 1, Jeff shares the thrilling tale of Southwest Airlines, where he dissects their journey to the summit and distills it into strategies tailor-made for you.
It's important to keep in mind that companies like Southwest compete in the real world, just like you, and face real-world challenges, just like you. You might be surprised at how similar those challenges are to the struggles that you grapple with on a day-to-day basis.
Don't miss out on your blueprint for success. Subscribe, tune in, and let's build your brand together.
You may have noticed that the very best brands in the world are also known for having somewhat unique corporate cultures. That's often the glue that holds everything together when they encounter those rough spots.
We don't do it because it inconveniences the passengers to whom we are primarily dedicated, the short-haul frequent flyer.
Follow the link in the show notes to subscribe to Build Your Brand today. Remember, no matter the size, the journey's the same. Your brand's journey to the top starts here.